All right. So at this stage, we are at the data ingestion step of our process of our end-to-end data engineering project process. And right now, we are in our API that we configured in our resource group on Azure. Okay. So a couple of things to note is that we're going to be using important things like the API endpoints, on this API we configured to connect to this, because remember we're going to connect to this API on Microsoft Fabric platform through the data factory. And we're going to be using things like the keys and the endpoints to make this work. So let's switch over to app.powerbi.com and let's go to our workspace we created. Remember, we created a workspace and we called it end-to-end DE project. So this is our workspace, and if you look at our workspace, we have several things. We have our lake house that we created. We have this within the lake house is a semantic model. There's the SQL analytics endpoints. So from here, actually, I think we should switch over to Data Factory. Yes, so we are now in the Data Factory, and actually on the Data Factory now, remember we're going to be doing some data ingestion with Data Factory and of course the API we created. So for this to work, we have to configure pipelines, a data pipeline for the process to work well, like to connect and to the API and connect to the next step. And even for the orchestration of our entire project, we will need a data pipeline. So that's what we're doing from the data factory. So I'm going to click on data pipeline. So this helps us ingest data and schedule workflows, which will be very important for our project. So I will name this pipeline news ingestion ingestion pipeline. And I'll press create, and that will create a pipeline for us. Okay, it's loading. This will be very important for our process. Not will be. This is very important for our process. So yes, we have been able to use a Fabric Data Factory to create a pipeline, and now remember this pipeline is going to be useful to help us ingest data from the API, and it's going to be useful in our entire project orchestration. So what we're going to do from here is create a copy data activity. And we're doing this so that we can be easily able to get data from the API. So we're going to create a copy data activity. So click on copy data, add to canvas, and you can see our copy data activity has been created. I would just move it around and rename it. I would say copy Bing API data. So copy Bing news data. All right. So that's just naming. Where's the source of the data coming from? The source of our data is going to be coming from the Bing lake. Or let's go to more. That was the source of our data is going to come from an API. So we have to properly configure it. It's not going to come from our lakehouse. It's coming from the Bing API on Azure. So we have to configure that properly. And that's what we're about to do right now. So with the copy data activity, as you can see, you can connect to a multitude of data sources. Let's go to view more. Actually, we want to connect, we want to get data, I want to ingest data from an API. So, I mean, there's a lot of things here. There's a folder, SQL server. To go through all of this will take time, but we'll select the best data source that will work well for our project. And for that, the REST will be the best for that. Let's click on REST. The REST will be best for that. So next thing now is, okay, how do we configure this? We're seeing things like the base URL, token audience, how we're going to configure this. So we're going to go back to our API we created on Azure, find how we are going to configure the connection. All right, so we want to figure out how we're going to connect this to our API on Azure. So for extra context, a copy data activity, first of all, that we just ran is able to help us connect to a data source we want to ingest data from basically. And also, like, it's not just connecting and bringing data, where is it storing it? In our situation, our data is going to be stored in our lakehouse. So let's find out how to configure this connection settings. And to do that, let's hop back right in to our Ping API in Azure. So to do this is not that complicated. So we are in the overview section. Let's go to tutorials. The good thing about this is that Microsoft has provided tutorials on how to use their API. So they're just making everything easy for us. We have some things going on here, Bing statistics portal, several things, but let's go to what we're most interested in, which is the Bing New Search API. So let's look at the Bing New Search API and try to understand how we're going to connect our API to Azure Fabric's Data Factory. Apologies. So here we are. Okay, the following query parameters may. Okay, this is telling us about how to use the query parameters on new search, and we're not going to be using query parameters yet. But if you notice, the connection that we chose was REST. So we're under the REST section and we're in the query parameters. For our connection, we're not going to be looking at the query parameters for now. We're going to be moving all the way to the endpoints. So why are we moving to the endpoints? So sometimes, or in most cases, the endpoints, because in our situation we are asked for the base URL. Yeah. So the endpoints can also be seen as the base URL. Yeah. So let's scroll all the way down. He's giving us some description and the endpoint. So to request news search result, get a request to one of the following endpoints. As basically these are the base URL we can use. And I'm seeing about three. So this first one ends with dash news, returns the top news. This one ends with dash search, and this one ends for trending topics. So there are three different ways to connect to this Bing News API. And just to save time, the one that's most useful for us is the search, the one that ends with that search, because with this we can be able to configure uh, how we can look for interesting topics that are relevant to us. Want to search interesting news topic that are relevant to us. Trending topics and the other first one can be good too, but in our situation, this is what we're going to use. And yes, I mentioned that the endpoint is basically the base URL. And for this, what I'm going to do is highlight this and copy. Now I'm going to go back to Data Factory and the copy data activity. I'm going to paste that URL. It's been pasted and it's loading. So for this token audience URL, we don't really need this. And for the connection credentials, we are going to click on create new connection. Connection name by default is your base URL name. So I'll call this Bing News Bing News API connection. We're seeing the gateway none. Okay, we can leave it anonymous authentication type anonymous. Well, I think maybe I'll explain why I'm choosing anonymous for now later. But yes, anonymous will be chosen for now. So if I'm satisfied, I think I'm satisfied with this. I can go ahead and click on connect. All right. So at this point, it seems like we have been able to. It seems end quote, we have been able to connect to the Bing News API on Azure. So let's test our connection. Let's see what happens when we test our connection. Let's run some testing and see what's going to happen. I'm really interested in seeing what goes on. Is the connection successful? Is the connection going to fail? Oh, Connection successful. That's very good. So we can see so far so good that yes, we have been able to make a successful connection to our API from the Azure platform. So the Bing API we created in our resource group, we have been able to connect to it on the data factory in Fabric. Yes. So as mentioned before, at this point in time, we have been able to connect to our Bing News API. Very good. Um, and the connection is successful. Very good also. But unfortunately, there's a caveat. There's one thing going on here that we haven't mentioned or I haven't mentioned. So we might be connected, or not we might, we are connected to the API, but it doesn't mean that we have the necessary permissions, or will I say authentication, to be able to get the data from the API and use the data for whatever purpose. So yes, the connection has been established, but we don't have the permissions to use the data. What do I mean? I liken this to those days in school where you're connected to the school Wi-Fi, but you can't really browse the internet normally unless you put in your username and password. So you connected to the Wi-Fi, yes, on your laptop or your system, your PC, whatever, but until you put your user details and log into the to the internet, to the Wi-Fi properly before you be able to browse properly. And if you don't have data set, you'll never be able to browse. But that's by the wayside. So actually, here we need to configure the permissions for us. We need to show them, okay, we need to configure authentication permissions, anything you want to call it, that will actually enable us to be able to use this data from the API. So how are we going to do that? Let's go back all the way to the tutorial that Microsoft is giving us. So far so good. We've been able to configure the endpoint, which we also mentioned can be it's the same thing as the base URL. So where I'm going to go to in this case is not query parameters, not response objects. I'm going to go along with the headers. I'm going to go along with the headers. So we're using basically using a REST API, and usually REST APIs along with the base URL usually might require us to have or to pass a header to authenticate whatever we're trying to do. So in our situation, so there are a lot of things here, header, accept, no. Let's not make this too confusing. But we have three parameters: the header name, whether it's required or not required, no, yes, and description. So basically, what does this mean? In our situation now, where we've been able to create a connection using an appropriate Bing um, base URL or endpoint, we also need to pass a header that will authenticate us to properly make use of whatever we're trying to the whatever API we're trying to configure or use for our project. So yes, the required parts, anywhere you see the required no, means that we don't need to pass the header with the whatever URL we're using. So if you look through all this, you see no in basically all cases except for one, except for this case OCP, I mean subscription key. So you can also see this as the username anyway. Although it says key, I see this as a username. So just like the example I gave about the Wi-Fi. So this is the key. So we actually need to pass this key along with the base URL or the SQL or the I say SQL or the endpoints. So let's go back to data ingestion pipeline. So actually, for extra context, because we are going to be putting something like into a username or password, or username and an authentication key. That's the reason why we choose authentication card as anonymous. So we want it to be anonymous. So yes, let's configure this setup properly. So to be able to use this thing I like into a username and password, we actually have to go to the advanced section and we want to add some additional headers basically. So I go to additional header section, additional HTTP request, just click on new. And so what's the name? The name is what we copied from there, which is the OCP OCPT, OCP admin, whatever. So let's paste this. So it's like, oh, okay, that's your login detail. Okay, what's the password? Anyway, you can see it like that. So the password in quotes or the key. To have that or to know that, we're going to go back to our Bing API that we configured in our resource group on Azure. And we are going to go to the keys and endpoints section. Let's wait for this to load in the keys and endpoints section. So basically, we can choose any of these keys and it will work. So I'll copy the first one and I'll go back to our data pipeline and I'll paste so the value. So it's like a password basically. I'll paste that as a value. And yes, I've been able to almost round up with the steps in terms of because if you notice we're at the source section. So there's one more step for us to do to be able to for us to be done with configuring a source. So we have configured the connection, we have configured the authentication, we have made sure it's correct and well. So there's one more step for us to do before we can move to the next parts of the setup. At this point in our project, we want to configure how news from the Bing search is going to be like. We're going to configure something we call query parameters. It's basically how are you going to search? What do I mean? Normally, when you go online, so I have Google open in my tab. Let's say I want to search for Power Rangers. Power Rangers. So you can see Power Rangers, of course. Power Rangers SPD. I'm a huge Ranger fan. But anyhow, you can see what's going on. And I don't even want to bring our attention to what's being searched all the way here. I want our attention to be brought all the way to the URL up. So you can see google.com, this Google search, /search, question mark Q equal to Power Rangers, Power plus Rangers. So what's going on here? Basically, we're on Google before normally, and the query parameter or the search parameter we put in was Power Rangers. And this is how it's arranged in URL format. This is how it's arranged. /search, because we want to search, question mark Q equal to Power plus Rangers, Power Rangers. That's what's going on there. That's the query parameter that we put in, and forget all these other parts. They can't be understood easily by humans. But yeah, we want to configure the our query parameter for our our project, which is what we're trying to search the latest news. And we'll still add some query parameters towards that, and we'll still filter the search or make it more niche. But how are we going to go about this? We're going to go about this through the relative URL. So I want first of all, before I even do this, I want us to go back all the way to where we choose a base URL, aka the endpoint. And you can see this is what we chose, and this is what's going to do without us editing it or adding any query parameter to the base URL. So it's going to return news articles based on user search query if we don't put anything. So if the search query is empty, the call returns the top news article. In our situation, we want the latest news articles every day. Top news articles will probably be something like maybe the trending news or news that people hot news and stuff like that. But one latest news, not trending news, right? So we have to properly configure our query parameters. And so first of all, let's go ahead with the search parameter. So if you are just interested in query parameter, you can go all the way. There's actually a query parameter section, and there's a lot of things that we're actually going to use from here actually. But let's go about with the first one, which is a search. We want to search for the latest news. So similar to the Power Rangers, I'll put customer Q equals to latest plus news. So I'll just copy this and edit customer Q equals the latest plus news. So want the latest news equals the latest plus news. So please for this. All right. So let's actually test it out. Let's click on the preview data. and see whether anything good will come out. So if we could be wrong. Let's confirm. All right. This is good. This is good. So far, so good. We have a data preview. We have a preview of the news that's going to come out, and you can see it's in a JSON structure. And we are seeing the latest news. Okay. Adopt intent false. Original query latest news. Read link. Okay. Good, good, good. URL. Today's news includes the ongoing political rate. So we're seeing interesting stuff. And yes, this is the latest news generally. We have not filtered anything by region. We have not filtered anything by any other parameter. But it's just giving us the latest news on Bing. So we are going to go ahead and make this a bit more, add some query parameters to it, to make it more dynamic or to give it more search options. So we want the latest news. That's already done. And so to skip guesswork, let's go all the way to the documentation. So we have things like CC, we have things like category. So we can say sport, entertainment, but I don't want to niche the search parameters by category. I want it to be latest news generally. We have things like counts, okay. So it tells us here, normally the actual delivered may be less than requested. So the default is 10, the maximum is 100. Hmm. So there's a possibility that so far so good. If we click on preview data, it's maybe giving us max of 10 data sets or 10 latest news. But we could actually filter it, or we could actually niche things down, or we could actually be selective what how we work with what we're doing. And let's say let's see a max output of 100. Let's do that. Let's use the count parameter to do that. So basically, we're going to add another parameter to this latest news, latest plus news. We're going to add something else, and we're going to add a count of 100. So I know how this is looking. This is half when I hover, when I move around, this is going like this. But we're going to manage. So how do we add other parameters to this? It's very easy. Literally, we want the latest news and what? Use the an upper sum symbol, that's an symbol, and count equal to 100. So if I preview data now, I go all the way to preview data count, okay, count, it will show me about 100 because I specified to be 100 equal to 100, about 100 latest news data from the Bing search. It's about 100. It's more than before. If I scroll, you can see. I don't know if you noticed before, but it was quite short for me to get to the end. But now I have to scroll a lot. So it's about 100 latest news information, which is quite cool. But we're not done. We want the latest news. Okay, we want it to be 100. Okay, we also want it to give us the latest news within a time frame. So what do I mean? What am I trying to say specifically? So if you go all the way, so the query parameters, you are seeing a lot of things, category counts. There's actually something called the freshness. So from here, it helps us filters news articles by the following age values by day, week, and month. We want something, what the latest news. We don't want it by month because it's really latest at that point. Is it by week? No, one by day. So in the past 24 hours, what's the latest news? We want it filtered by day. So we'll have to set the freshness option today. So and that's going to be easy, just like how I added the count as 100. We can add the freshness as day. So I'll say and freshness. Can't even see. Okay. And freshness, is this updating? I don't think it is. Okay, it should update now. And freshness equal to Oh, I made a mistake. That's not looking like and. That's looking like a dollar sign. So and freshness equal to, I think day was in capital letter D. Day. So let's run this. Just test it. Okay. Okay, it works. It works. So this is giving us the latest news data, generally on the Bing News API, on the Bing search platform. Giving us about 100 latest news information in the past day. So dates published 2024 12/27. So that was yesterday. So within 24 hours. Good. That's good. That's good. That's good. And we're almost done. So we'll still add one or two, probably just one more query parameter. And what am I talking about? It's basically the next one, MKT. So it's a market where the results come from. So typically, it tells us the market is where the user is making the request from. Okay, so in our case, if we check, can I figure out where the request is coming from? If you can't figure it out, though, you could try to be specific with where your data is coming from. So what I mean is that we can be specific, more specific about where our latest news data, the country is coming from by that MKT parameter, by that MKT parameter. So let's look at what we could configure market MKT to, or what I call it market to. So let's see market codes. So a new tab is open. And so basically, you can set MKT into equal to these countries. Do we have Nigeria? Unfortunately, I don't think so. I don't think so. We have Argentina, Canada. So which African country can we choose? It seems like we have to choose South Africa. It's the only African country I can see here for now. So yes, so South Africa, English, and this is what we actually need. En dot dash ZE. So we can set the market. This would mean en.ze. If they say MKT equals to en.ze, it means equal to South Africa. So I find it in the Bing news data, the latest data, in the past 24 hours, specifically to South Africa. So that would be very good. So let's do that. So freshness, 100, no, freshness equal to day, and MKT, right? MKT equal to en.ze, en dash ze. So let's preview our data and see what happens next. Okay, Bing News, Eagles versus Cowboy, latest news. Eagles a quarterback on Sunday. What can I see? Okay, I really don't know South African news outlets, so I can't be certain. But yes, from what we've done, this should give us the latest news within South Africa from the Bing News API. So it doesn't necessarily have to be South African press. It can be South African other press talking about South Africa and stuff like that. So I don't know too much about news. So, but basically, we've been able to configure our Bing News API properly. I've been able to search for the latest news, count 100, giving us about 100 freshness days, so in the past 24 hours. So you can see 2024, 12, 27. And the country specifically that we want to look at is South Africa. So set the region to South Africa. Very interesting. At this point in time, I'd say I am very satisfied with our connection to the source, our source connections. Basically, in our copy data activity, we have connected to the Bing news API on Azure. And not just that, we have also been authenticated to get data from it, right? We have added query parameters to how data is gotten, like, so, okay, we're searching for the latest news per day in South Africa. You get the idea. So I am very satisfied with this. And in this situation, with me satisfied with this, I will move all the way to destination because now, okay, we have configured a copy data activity. Okay, we have configured how the data is gotten, like where it's getting from, how it's how basically the data we're going to ingest is going to come. So, but where is it going to come to? Where is it going to go to? So we need to configure the destination. So I remember our destination is our lake house. So we have a lot of things here, and let's not be distracted. But let's go to Bing Lake DB. That's what we call our lake house. Okay, the next thing is root folder. Remember, we want a JSON file. If you remember our general project architecture, we're going to be bringing the data into the Lakehouse database as JSON file, JSON format. You can already see in the source when we go to preview, it has a JSON-like structure already. So I'll leave it as files. The file path, I will not give it I will not give it a new or a different file path. I'll just leave that empty, and I will call this. I give it a file name. I would say, Bing API data, and it's going to be saved as a JSON in JSON format. So I'll just put the JSON at the end, JSON, JSON, and like that. And not just that, we're not done yet. We need to make sure this last part is configured properly. I'm seeing delimited text. I mean, this is a JSON file, so this will not make sense. It will make sense if it's actually JSON. Delimited text will be for things like CSV. So I'll say .json. And yeah, I'm almost done. But for me, I just want to check something. So I think I can duplicate this page. I'll duplicate this page and I'll go all the way to the data engineering. So on data factory here, I want to go all the way to data engineering. I want us to look at our lake house from there. So give it a second to load. Okay, so let's go to not data factory. Let's go to data engineering. And where's our lake house? Our lake house, our lake house, our lake house. Uh, ND. Okay, so let's go to our lake house. Our lake house, of course, is empty right now. It's empty right now. So files are empty, tables are empty. Okay, that's good because we haven't been able to run this activity yet. So I think I'm quite satisfied with how copy data activity is in terms of the source and in terms of the destination, right? Destination into our lake house, source from the API. I've configured everything we need to configure here. So in this kind of situation, before we run this, let's save our activity or let's save our configuration. So it has been saved successfully. Successfully saved. Okay. At this point in time, I think it's safe for us to run this. So when we run this now, all the configurations in terms of the source and destination, everything we did to set this up will be applied. So where's run? Let's click on run. So running activity, running activity, running activity. Oh, so it's running, it's queued. Let's see, spare pipeline status in progress. So let's give it a few seconds and let's try to see the output of our work so far. In progress, 18 seconds, 24 seconds. Wow, run succeeded, pipeline status succeeded. This is very good. So let me go back to the data engineering tab I opened. I opened that so that I'll just be able to look at the files section. So I'm not saying anything yet, so probably I should refresh. And let me click on files again. So you see, this is our JSON file. that was created from the data we ingested and things like that. So it has run successfully. We have a file saved here. I really love the way things have gone. I really love the way things have gone. So yes, we've been able to properly configure or properly run data ingestion step in our end-to-end data engineering project. I think from here, I'll see you next in the next steps we're going to make. So yes, I'm satisfied. Thank you very much.